What makes a startup a startup? And when do you move on from that definition? Marc Murphy, the CEO of Atlatl, is currently trying to answer that question. Atlatl is changing the sales process with AR and VR, and the company is selling to top-tier enterprise companies looking to transform digitally. On this episode of IT Visionaries, Marc explains how he's grown as a CEO and used the lessons he's learned to bring Atlatl to the point it's at now. Enjoy the conversation. IT Visionaries is created by the team at mission.org and brought to you by the Salesforce Customer 360 platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Build connected experience, empower every employee, and deliver continuous innovation with the customer at the center of everything you do. Learn more at salesforce.com/platform. This podcast is created by the team at mission.org.
This is Ian Faison, Chief Content Officer here at mission.org, and we have on the other line, Marc, what's going on?
How are you, Ian? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
You know, we've actually known each other for a few years here, and it was not long after you became CEO of Atlatl, and I'm just so excited about the company, about AR, and about, the stuff that you're doing. So excited to share that with our listeners. But first, I just want to know, you served in the Army as well. Why did you decide to go into the Army in the first place?
Well, yeah, I think it was more of a decision to serve. The Army was the only ROTC program offered at Bucknell, where I went to school. So I think it was more about a decision to serve. And, the branch kind of decided itself based on where I wanted to go to school.
And so kind of flash forward to now, CEO of Atlatl, tell me a little bit about where the company's at, what you're building, what you're working on, and why you're so excited to join.
Well, Atlatl's in the sales acceleration space, and we've built and are building a very unique and at this point market-leading visual configuration software. And, we're moving the sales process for B2B complex and industrial products outside of brick and mortar and into a virtual and augmented reality space. And we've spent time creating a really unique and enterprise level capability to do B2B commerce. And we're excited because the market's very large. And it's still right ahead of us, meaning, we don't see a lot of competition right now. And the competition we do have, I think, is just driving a larger market interest, which is always good.
I think when we talked originally years ago, we had talked about this situation where technology always goes kind of either starts in like the gaming or entertainment kind of stuff, or it starts in big business and kind of figures its way out how to be, useful and relevant. But for salespeople on the ground, using AR is so new and novel, especially when you all rolled out the product. When it was, I'm sure you had a lot of conversations where, salespeople saying like, "Wait, what? We can do this? Like, this is crazy." And working with people and customers that really, it's crazy that they were even selling without some type of modeling or 3D rendering in real time to begin with. It's such an obvious use case. I'm curious, just like, when you bring this product to folks that are trying to kind of do the old way versus the new way, leveraged by technology, like what's that kind of transformation like?
We have customers, and I think we are still selling to visionaries. So we're still selling to the top 10% of companies that are really leaning forward in digital transformation. But within that category, there's a couple different customers coming to us. We have customers that come with a very tangible, pragmatic business case of trying to reduce their sales process. And we have a customer that's in the piping industry. And their sales force was literally mapping these out on graph paper, sometimes miles worth of piping in industrial complexes. And we've actually memorialized one of the graph papers in our office just to show where the tech has come from. So, when you move a process that's so manual into software in any market, I don't care what it is, you're going to find huge ROI and huge efficiencies. And that's one of our customers. I think it's a very practical use case for our software. And then you have another customer that's really driven by creating a very unique customer experience as a way to drive market share. And they're more interested in a highly visual customer experience, being able to immerse their customer in the product, and creating an augmented reality experience for their customers. And that's really to use experience to gain market share. So, two different use cases, slightly on the end of the spectrums, but for our software, both driving tremendous value in the market.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the classic example of backing out the business case and using the technology rather than the other way around. I think, when we talk to other technology leaders, I think a lot of times people get really psyched up about the tech and not like how it would be used on the ground. I remember when you and I were talking about how, that salesperson, to get them to actually implement the technology is one of those really hard things, right? Because you potentially have somebody that's been selling the same way for, could be 20 years, a manufacturing product that has been using graph paper, has been able to, had, the sales cycle where they go back and forth on the CAD drawings and things like that. That's one of those situations where, it's not necessarily really easy to implement. Just like any organization, technology is sometimes tough because of change. But this is something where really, as buyers get more sophisticated, you can see the obvious future that, like, of course, everyone would have this. I mean, is that something that's really exciting for you?
It is, and it's exciting for our team. I think they're waiting for it to, we believe we're probably still slightly early, but we're all feeling like we're on the edge. And what we think the indicators are is we're starting to get that one or two customers in every vertical we're going into, and that's creating demand for other customers. So the excitement comes when we start seeing the market leaders, even if they're using one of our competitors' tech. It helps us give a use case to point to that's driving demand for our customers when they come to us. So I think that paradigm exists for any new tech. Is you'll get the market leaders will be successful, and they start moving the needle in their revenue with your software, where we feel like we're right on the edge of that moving in the market.
Yeah, and you said that you joined the company at an inflection point. Now that you've been there for a while, kind of where do you feel like the market is, at this point?
Visual tech, 3D tech has evolved significantly from a platform perspective. So we have that. The unknown here is 5G, and I think that the ability for that kind of capacity in manufacturing facilities has really moved the needle as well. And then, people are just getting more comfortable with the idea of visual commerce and even AR. And I think we kidded about it when we first met, and I've written some blog posts about it, but small things like the emergence of Pokemon Go and other AR-driven games gets us all comfortable operating in that environment. And then you start thinking about practical use cases for that technology. So, I think when people have context, even from their consumer or personal lives, on how tech can be applied, it makes these business conversations so much easier. And, we're seeing that evolve very quickly in, conversations we couldn't have a year ago because the tech wasn't there. All of a sudden it's emerged, and we're in conversations where this capability has huge practical application.
Yeah, I forget who said this, but they called it like the grandma or grandpa problem, where it's like, if the problem is so easy to explain that you could explain it to your grandma and grandpa and they totally get it. I feel like there's like a corollary to that, which is if the technology is getting commonplace in your kids, then it's probably, the wake up call for for you to realize that you should be using it in your business life. If your kids are running around with AR, then being able to adopt that as part of your sales process or whatever it is probably a little bit more palatable.
For us, it's specific to AR because that's the more market leading piece of our technology. As people get comfortable with the application of it, whether it's in their consumer lives or their personal life, they can start bringing real practical use cases to the table. And where a year ago we were really pushing this out into the market, now we're getting inbound RFPs and inbound interest from big enterprise companies that are coming to us with practical use cases for our augmented reality technology. And that shift has happened over the last 6 months to a year for our company.
This is your second company that you've been CEO of. The last one, Spark. I'm curious, tell us a little bit about what Spark was and the process of being CEO there.
Right. So Spark was, we were in the health, we was a software company in the health benefit space, and we were developing health benefits, big enterprise health benefit software. And, it's interesting part of my story. I was a big company guy working at Deloitte, where I found myself directly out of the service. But really started getting a little bit of a need to be uncomfortable again and a need to maybe do something else. So, got the opportunity through a network to join a company called Spark, and it was small at the time. A technical founder that was building the company and needed a partner to help him grow it. And over the course of the first year, I evolved and emerged into the CEO role. Went from about 75 people to about 350 people. And ended up successfully exiting that company in early 2016 to Booz Allen Hamilton.
And so kind of going from that experience for your second time becoming CEO, was there some things that you went into it with a different mindset, with different mental models, kind of based off that experience?
I was fortunate enough to take I did some post-transaction, courtesy work for Booz Allen, also a wonderful company, by the way. But, and then, took some time off between roles, and I really sat down and wrote a version of a playbook, notes to myself on, things I learned, things we did well, things I would do better the next time, how to build a culture, core values I was interested in, all the things that I was trying to capture from my experience at Spark that I would bring to the next job. And, I hit the ground, CEO of Atlatl. And, I think looking back, 50% of it maybe was helpful. And the rest of it proves that there's definitely no playbook for a startup CEO. So, I think go into these jobs with your experiences. Fortunately, I had the benefit of doing this job before, which is huge. And then the good business fundamentals that a company like Deloitte brings you, and then, obviously the leadership skills and fundamentals from the Army. So, that all went into the version of what I'm doing now. But, it's a really exciting, interesting job. And there's no one there to script it for you. So you bring what you can to the job, and then you figure out the rest at a very rapid pace.
You wrote an article last year about Industry 4.0, factory stack. Why'd you write the article, and what do you think that like Industry 4.0 means, in the larger context of the next industrial revolution?
Right. And thank you. That article actually has gotten a lot of playback and a lot of feedback and notes from other people. But, I was reading an article by a venture capitalist actually in Germany, which makes sense with Industry 4.0. But, he talked about this idea of the factory stack, and, was naming pieces of software that went into the factory stack ecosystem. And he left sales out of the factory stack. So, my idea that came into that blog post was, if we're really going to take advantage of the evolution of what's going on the shop floor, and that is additive manufacturing, 3D printing, metal printing, robotics, Internet of Things. So all this tremendous advancement that's going on within the four walls of the manufacturing facilities. But to use my anecdote before, we still have sales people that are out in the market, out in the field, selling on graph paper. And can we extend this idea to include that starting point? So when you do get to the manufacturing floor, you're starting with a digital footprint and not an analog footprint. So I've talked in other forums about you can't sell an analog when the world is digital, and that's also gotten a lot of playback in just the idea, Ian, that if we're going to really extend Industry 4.0, we have to start thinking about what the starting point is. And I believe the starting point is when that salesperson starts selling the product, they need to start thinking about selling in software and in digital.
Before this, we were talking about who you work with. And I think that, it's a perfect encapsulation of where we are in digital transformations for how many different folks you work with for this solution. We're talking head of sales, head of marketing, CIO, CTO, chief digital officer, chief transformation officer, chief customer officer. It really is this intersection of where, business and technology meet. I'm curious, like as you're working with your customers and bringing in those different folks to the table, where does the technology stack versus the business stack, like where do those two things kind of come together on this versus where those potentially, at odds with one another?
Well, I think there's two drivers that we like to see. Is we love a company, particularly enterprise, that is heading into a big digital transformation, and they formally have a transformation officer or a digital team or experience team, and those people understand the direction they have is to move this organization into Industry 4.0 in our case. In those cases, the CIO gets involved naturally because we're intruding on his ecosystem. We're going to be part of his stack. So, we have to address the CIO's concerns, and, we understand that. But, the real needle movers for us is when there's a transformation team that, has sales and revenue goals attached to this transformation. Are we just replacing an ERP, or are we bolting onto an ERP? Sometimes software like us can get moved down in priorities when it's, there's more pragmatic priorities like putting an ERP in. But, when we have a customer that have a real paradigm shift that they want to do through digital transformation, those are the people that are going to get these things done and really understand the power of our software.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that the governance piece of this is pretty interesting because you look at something that, especially that, as a sales-driven product that IT wants to make sure, or, technology wants to make sure is being leveraged and adopted and everything in the right way. And it's one of the things that, ultimately a lot of that stuff is going to feed into, like you said, a lot of the systems that you already have in place. Are there any kind of like best practices that you've seen from your customers on ways to kind of integrate the business functions and the technology functions to make sure there's a seamless kind of adoption?
Where we're selling into a real alignment between sales and marketing, because when our software is really used most effectively is when those two business units are aligned. Because what we're finding is we are a sales acceleration tool, but the power of these visual assets becomes a really powerful marketing experience as well. So when we see that alignment, it really helps the investment case, the business case, and then on adoption, really driving it through the organization. So, I think as a best practice, obviously CIO always like to see him at the table because that's table stakes. But, having real alignment in the organization between sales, marketing, because they can drive the business case and ROI for the organization. And if we see that kind of alignment, after we get deployed into organizations, it's those two individuals that are really helping us drive value, and that increases ROI, increases revenue, increases ARR for us, and really helps us be successful.
Do you feel like you are kind of still in the startup kind of environment, or do you feel like you've graduated into another kind of level of the business? It seems obviously still refining the product, and it's early times for AR, but based off of not potentially being on the constant raise cycle or things like that, I'm curious kind of where you're excited to spend your time these days.
So it's interesting because I remember at Spark someone talking about us as a startup, and I turned to them and said we're 350 people. It does not feel like a startup to me anymore. And we have all the big company processes and all the big company things that would go on with being a normal sized company. So I think the term, it's interesting, and I'm sure you see it where you're sitting, is the term startup. I think it's thrown around in different occasions that it really doesn't fit. I think if we have a enterprise product that I think is well beyond what I would call the tech risk that usually comes with a true startup. So I think we've definitely matured beyond startup in the fact that we have an enterprise platform. We're servicing public companies. We have all the security and platform infrastructure in place to scale at that level. So, I think in that aspect, we are a mature company. I think as we're still operating very much in startup speed, and I'd like to keep it that way. I think we're still very flat, like a more traditional startup. So, I think there's elements in all the best ways that we're still a startup. But, as I go out and sit with enterprise customers, we very much have the maturity and infrastructure in place to operate at the enterprise level. So it's a little bit of a mix there. As far as where I am spending my time and aligning my time is always a lot of time in sales, and where the sales team needs me to help move that needle, that very important needle. And spending a lot of time in product and with our implementation team, and really spreading myself out between those three areas.
With regards to integrations, you have an open API, you integrate with companies like Salesforce and Autodesk and all that stuff. Just from a technology standpoint, how much time are you spending on figuring out ways to make sure that integrations and that customer success and customer adoption is fitting into how these companies are doing business? As you kind of mentioned, a lot of these companies are potentially pretty old school in how they manage their technology stack.
The ability to integrate, and I'll talk about enterprise because that's where we're focused. The ability to integrate, to give confidence that you can integrate, is absolute table stakes when you're trying to sell into enterprise, because no one's going to replace things. You're always going to have to integrate with an ERP. You're always going to have to integrate with a CRM. So you have to go to the table in the sales process with your plan and give confidence, and confidence is important to that CIO or CEO that you will fit into their existing stack, and this software will operate with all the integrations they need you to have. Super important. We've spent a lot of time on building end-to-end integrations, building our open API and documentation around that, finding the right middleware partner, all aimed with not only making sure we can execute that with confidence, but there needs to be efficiencies if you're going to scale in enterprise, in being able to do repeatable integrations and keep those integrations well maintained. So probably a longer answer than you wanted, but it's so important to get right, particularly as a startup. If you have an interest in going into even high mid-market enterprise, and you have to have a plan and be able to execute against it, because you will get asked, you will get those requirements, and you have to be able to execute on it efficiently.
To not have the ability to integrate, I mean, people just have so many different situations, and then they change, right? Like that's the other thing. They'll switch to a new platform, and you need to be able to be flexible and able to deal with that. So it's hugely critical. I mean, it's like you said, it's table stakes. What's next for Atlatl? What are we looking at over the next 5 years?
I think we're going to continue to grow. We're in a great market. Global manufacturing is just a massive marketplace. I think we are going to look to evolve more and more into B2B commerce. And in addition to what we're doing now, we think the market is naturally evolving from visual configuration into a fuller suite of B2B commerce. And that's a market trend we're seeing right now, where traditional mainline B2B manufacturers want to create a commerce-like e-commerce experience. We're expanding our product suite to be able to cover that piece of it. It's a natural kind of flow for us and extension of our software, but we're being more deliberate about that product offering over time, and we're focused on building a valuable company.
Let's get into the lightning round. These questions are fast and easy, just like building apps on the Lightning platform from Salesforce. We love Salesforce. We love the Lightning platform. We love employee experience. It's something that we think about all the time. And I'm sure something that you think about all the time at your company, how your employees can do better, work faster and smarter. Just like these quick, fast, and easy lightning round questions. First question: what app are you using on your phone that is the most fun?
Most fun? Slack is my favorite app, and I think it's very business focused, but it's a lot of fun as well.
What's your favorite vacation spot in the South, where I used to live in South Carolina?
So Miami's definitely our favorite right now, and definitely the South. It's far south, but it's a great trip, and it's an easy trip from Charleston.
What book or podcast are you reading or listened to recently that you particularly enjoyed?
I just finished an incredible book about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge, and it's just fascinating when you're building something in today's age and you look back on, they generally finish that bridge on time and generally on budget, which is just an incredible feat for what they were doing and the time they were doing it. Great book.
What about your favorite or most interested technology that you're excited about going forward?
Augmented reality. I think we have not even touched on the applications in our lives, both personal and professional, for those technologies.
What question do you never get asked that you wish you were asked more often?
Why are we doing this? Because of how hard it is. So I think it's a question I wish people asked more, because it would make me feel like they are wondering about that.
Yeah, why are you doing it?
I love building things, and I loved the process of building something. And I think building a company even a software company, is a very tangible process, and it's something you can go to work, you can see this place building, other people contribute to it. I still run into people over this town that were part of Spark, and we talk about what we built there and how much fun it was. So I think in our work lives, that opportunity, not a lot of people get to do. It's certainly not easy, but I think just the opportunity to build something that's so tangible, and hopefully you can point back on value or some kind of accomplishment, is just really very rewarding for me.
Marc, this has been awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. We'll be following along, your Atlatl journey here. Any final words? Any things to plug? Any open requisitions on the team?
We need a back-end engineer that's familiar with Python, and anyone interested in moving from the West Coast to Charleston or from wherever this is podcast to, we'd love to have you.
Charleston is an amazing place. I loved my time in South Carolina. So, Marc, thanks for coming on.
You got it.
IT Visionaries is created by the team at mission.org and brought to you by the Salesforce Customer 360 platform, the #1 cloud platform for digital transformation of every experience. Build connected experience, empower every employee, and deliver continuous innovation with the customer at the center of everything you do. Learn more at salesforce.com/platform.